Hey, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know that issues 1 through 5 of my comic Dark Phantom are available now on Comixology and Gumroad. We've worked really hard on it and it would mean a lot to me if you would check it out. Thanks, and let's get on with the video. Doctor No More. Hey, welcome to Class Act Media. I'm Jack, and yeah, this might take a little bit of explaining. You see, between the end of Doctor Who's classic series and the beginning of the reboot series, there was an in-universe event called the Time War, a massive conflict between the Doctor's people, the Time Lords, and his mortal enemies, the Daleks. For most of the reboot series, the events of the Time War were left vague, and all we really knew about it was that it was a hugely destructive war that ended with the Doctor wiping out the entirety of both the Daleks and the Time Lords. But during the show's 50th anniversary, they decided to show us the version of the Doctor that had fought in the war, played by veteran actor John Hurt. Now, this Doctor was canonically from the era between the 8th and 9th Doctor. Only problem was, we had spent years understanding who the 9th Doctor was, who the 10th Doctor was, etc. Did this mean we now had to change the numbering in our heads for the modern Doctors? Well, no. Well, no, seeing as this version of the character was not calling himself the Doctor anymore. So he may have been the 9th incarnation of the Time Lord known as the Doctor, but he was not the 9th Doctor. Got all that? Good, moving on. I'm still gonna call him the Doctor though, just for the sake of simplicity. Like I said earlier, we first met the War Doctor during the 50th anniversary, when he was at the end of his journey, just about to make that fateful decision to end the Time War once and for all. And that was it. This was the only episode he ever appeared in. Now, this series is really just about the TV show. I don't really dive into the supplemental material in these videos. Not that I have anything against them, there's some great stuff outside the show, I just want to keep things relatively simple. But the War Doctor is still a canon Doctor, and I wanted to see more of him in order to expand my opinions. Thankfully, the company Big Finish, which holds the official license to make Doctor Who audio dramas, made a series of stories following the Doctor's adventures during the Time War. So just this once, we're going to be talking about what's going on in Doctor Who outside the show. Man, this has to be the most long-winded intro I've ever done for one of these videos, I'm sorry. With all that out of the way, how was the War Doctor? Well, John Hurt is obviously a great actor. If you've ever seen any of his movies, you don't need me to tell you that. I like that he doesn't necessarily play into the grouchy Doctor character type. I mean, he is very grouchy, don't get me wrong, but more than anything, he's just tired. You really get the feeling that this is a man who's had to abandon every aspect of who he used to be long ago, and has been fighting in this war so long that he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to get those parts of himself back. I love how this recontextualizes his decision to wipe out the Daleks and the Time Lords in one fell swoop. For years at that point, we'd been told that he did it because it was the only way to end the war, and if he hadn't done it, the entire universe would have been destroyed in the crossfire. But now, you begin to wonder if he actually just did it because he was tired and just wanted it to be over. And that's not even something directly addressed in the story, it's communicated almost entirely through Hurt's performance. He truly was the perfect choice to play this more punished version of the character. As far as other characters are concerned, the War Doctor didn't really have companions in the traditional sense, since he wasn't going on traditional Doctor Who adventures. However, he did have people joining him and helping him out. The first of these people, as well as my favorite War Doctor companion, was Rejoice. Rejoice came from the planet Keska, a world light years away from the Time Lord homeworld of Gallifrey, and completely untouched by the Time War. When she first met the Doctor, she hadn't even heard of the Time Lords or the Daleks before. Rejoice served as a huge breath of fresh air for the Doctor. After spending years fighting in this war, here was a chance for him to rest, recharge, and maybe reconnect a little bit with the man he used to be. And Rejoice was the perfect person to have by his side for that. She was very emotionally mature. Even though the Doctor was rude and cold to her when they first met, she was able to see past his hard exterior and tried to reach out and fix the broken man inside.
Would you like some of this?
What is it?
It's good for you.
How do you know? I'm not from your planet. Might be a deadly poison to me.
It's just fruit juices.
What sort of fruit? Smells all right.
What planet are you from?
None of your business. tastes all right, I suppose.
Most people think it's delicious.
How nice for them.
She also had the same sense of curiosity and adventure that normally drove the Doctor to take people on as his companions in the old days. Rejoice served as a light at the end of the tunnel for the Doctor, a glimmer of hope that maybe he really could get back to the life he loved. However, when the Daleks followed him to Keska and Rejoice sacrificed herself to stop them, the Doctor realized that getting back to normal wasn't an option as long as this war continued. In addition to Rejoice, we also saw the return of Leela, an old companion from the Fourth Doctor. I understand why she's here. The last time we saw Leela, she decided to stay on Gallifrey, so it made sense that she'd be involved in the Time War. On top of that, pairing the War Doctor with one of his companions from the past is a good way to shine a mirror on how he's changed, and honestly, I think the War Doctor and Leela have great chemistry. However, I feel like they don't do enough to really make her presence feel like much more than fan service. It's more of a missed opportunity than anything else. And then, of course, there's the longest running War Doctor and companion who sticks around for the entirety of the Big Finish series, Cardinal Olistra, a senior member of the War Council of Gallifrey. I get the idea behind Olistra, pairing the Doctor up with a high-ranking member of the Gallifreyan government to show how the Time Lords have sunk in order to win the war. But I think they really botched the execution. I think what they were going for with her was someone who had long abandoned all their morals and was now looking for any excuse to justify their actions as being for the greater good. However, Olistra ended up coming across more like a mustache-twirling villain than anything else. Part of the problem might be her actress. Jacqueline Pierce is fine in the role, but I just never felt like she got into character as much as John Hurt did, leaving her performance feeling pretty flat by comparison. Oh well, this era was much more about the Doctor than the companions anyway, and at least that aspect was done brilliantly. Do you like my comically oversized leather jacket? It's like 90 degrees, it's very, very hot. I want to finish this video soon. As far as the stories go, as I said earlier, this was my first time diving into the Big Finish audio dramas, so I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. The War Doctor series is split up into 4 collections, each with 3 episodes. Now, right off the bat, I want to stress that the writers of these stories had an impossible task in front of them. For years, we had only heard about the Time War secondhand from the Doctor, leaving it up to our imaginations to figure out what such a massive conflict must have looked like. So, when writing stories set during the Time War, I can't see how they could have possibly matched what we had been picturing. What we ended up getting was mixed. In the first collection, Only the Monstrous, every episode is written by the same guy, Nicholas Briggs. Because of this, the whole thing feels like one cohesive vision. Each episode builds on the theme and plot of the previous one, and it all culminates in a very satisfying ending. It's a shame then that each collection after that has each episode being written by a different person. It seems like what happened for these last 3 collections is that the writers all decided on a thematic and narrative thread to connect their episodes, then they all went off and did their own things. This resulted in the stories feeling very repetitive. Where Only the Monstrous built upon its themes with every episode, the rest of them felt like they were just spinning their wheels, thematically speaking. There's only so many times I can hear, "War is bad," before I just say, "Yeah, I know, tell me something else, please." I will say though, even though, as I said, nothing they could have come up with would have been able to compare with what we had imagined, they did come up with some creative time-related weapons. My personal favorites are these bubbles of time that, if you get caught in one, age you rapidly until you die, and these bombs that you can set to go off in the past. All in all, these audio dramas are just okay, and I don't think they match the potential of what they could have been. One silver lining, though, is that it's made me want to look more into the Big Finish stuff, since that had previously been a big blind spot for me. So far, I've listened to some of the 10th Doctor stuff, the 6th Doctor story Real Time, and as I write this, I'm currently in the middle of the 5th Doctor story Spare Parts, all of which have been fantastic. So even though these particular stories were mediocre, I appreciate the new world they've introduced me to. Alright, before we wrap up, it's time to count down my top 5 War Doctor stories. Now, I'm not sure how people normally categorize the Big Finish stuff, but I'm going to be considering each individual episode in the collection as its own story. Except for Only the Monstrous, because like I said, that whole thing kind of flows well as one continuous story. Got all that? Good. Alright, let's get started. Number 5, A Thing of Guile. The Doctor and Illustra investigate a secret Dalek lab hidden inside an asteroid to try to uncover what their latest scheme is. This lab is so secret, in fact, that not even the Dalek High Command knows about it. And as the Doctor looks deeper, he soon learns why. These Dalek scientists are trying to reverse their own evolution to before the Daleks were turned into single-minded machines of hate in order to find creative new strategies to win the war. I really like the ideas on display here. This collection had mainly been about how the Time Lords were slowly becoming more and more like the Daleks as the war went on. Well, this one flips the script and has the Daleks trying to become more like the Time Lords. It's a neat concept, and the things the Daleks are making in that lab are sufficiently creepy. It's not the greatest Doctor Who story or anything, but I admire what it sets out to do. Number 4, Pretty Lies. The Doctor meets a reporter who learns about his stories from the future in order to report on them in the present. From him, the Doctor learns about a Dalek attack that's about to befall a nearby town, and he must use what little information he has in order to save as many people as possible. My favorite part of this story is what it has to say about the power of the media. The Doctor obviously hates what this war has become, as he's renounced his former name and no longer sees himself as a hero. But to his horror, he learns that this reporter has been betraying him as some kind of proud and courageous war hero. It's an interesting question. Is it worth peddling a false narrative if it gives people hope during a hopeless time, or does it only serve to continue the cycle of war if we see it as a heroic act? Plus, there's some fun characters here, with my personal favorite being the reporter's AI editor. Number 3, The Eternity Cage. The Sontarans, a warmongering society from the planet Sontar, are outraged that they are not allowed to participate in the Time War, since their entire society is built on warfare. So, they kidnap Cardinal Illustra and offer her up to both the Time Lords and the Daleks, and it's up to the Doctor to get her there first. The Sontarans are old villains from the classic series that I don't think I've mentioned yet in these videos, but they're pretty fun. It was nice to get a break from the Daleks always being the prime antagonists of these stories. Not only that, but there's a scene in which the Sontarans throw the Dalek time strategist in a prison with Illustra, and we get a pretty good conversation between these two enemies. I don't think it lives up to its full potential, but for what it was, it's a good time. Number 2, Only the Monstrous. I already talked a little bit about why I like this one during the companion section, so I'll keep this brief. The Doctor arrives on Keska, a world that has been left untouched by the Time War. At first, the Doctor sees this as an opportunity to go back to his old life, even just for a little while. But when the Daleks follow him to Keska, he realizes that that may never be an option again. What more can I say about this story that I haven't said already? Each episode flows very well into the next, and Rejoice is my favorite companion of the War Doctor series. I think this is John Hurt's best performance in the Big Finish stuff. His jaded and tired attitude works excellently with the themes of this story. The War Doctor audio dramas may not have been great, but this one at least is worth checking out in my opinion. Number 1, The Day of the Doctor. Yeah, I know, this one might be too obvious. It's an incredibly fun and fan-servicey ride with 3 really great versions of the Doctor all teaming up. But I think it also shows a great strength of the audio series. All throughout those, the Doctor had been repeatedly beaten down with the harsh realities of war until finally, this man who in the past had always seemed able to think up the perfect solution to every problem he faced, came to the conclusion that he needed to wipe out everyone involved in order to restore peace. In this episode, we see him just about to make that final decision. But as it goes on, we see him realize that there may be another way after all, and we see hope return to this man who had previously thought he could never get it back. It's a great celebration of what Doctor Who is, showing that no matter how dark things look, there is always light if you look hard enough. The War Doctor is an interesting part of Doctor Who history, but I think it does a good job bridging the gap between the classic series and the modern series, even if it happened several years after the fact. It's a shame we lost John Hurt so early. I would have loved to have spent more time with his Doctor, but the time we did get, I'll always look back on fondly. See you next time, guys, and... oh yes, of course. I suppose it makes sense, wearing a bit thin. I just hope the ears are a bit less conspicuous this time.